Eastern group now turning cold, Angels 12. Bogey Dope Western group.
285 and 43, Bronx.
Okay, I show him well south of the line, 14 miles.
Red 9 Slasher 02 copies, clear to engage. Danger close.
Clear to kill, clear to kill. He's abandoned down.
We received not just light automatic
Mindy, let's come hard left. Roger, just hit him. Keep hammering him. That's him right there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Air Combat Sim Podcast. Today we are joined with our good friend Tricker, the Baltic Dragon, and I'm Rob Grady, also known as RG. Today we're going to talk a bit about a couple episodes that we recorded recently, one with a good friend of the show, which is Steve Davies about the F-15E, as well as Metal2Mesh, which has been working on the 3D animation for the F-15E. So we really have a good bundle of the F-15E for you today, and we're going to talk about that for a bit. But to kick it off, Tricker, how you doing, man? What have you been up to?
Been good, man. Appreciate it. Just been creating content and just living the life of a bachelor, I guess. Got a girlfriend, but
bachelor,
just by myself, just hanging by myself. Mm-hmm. Playing volleyball, going to the beach.
And flying the airplane, right?
And flying
the airplane, yeah.
Yeah. And do you,
that's secondary though. Like volleyball's first, and then
that's important to have priorities, especially if you're flying the plane and you go, I've got to you're drawing some strategy on the volleyball.
Like, hang on, guys, I gotta think about this volleyball procedure real quick.
Yeah.
But no, I've been flying quite a bit, but I was off the last week, had a death in the family. So I was doing that whole stuff with the family, so I just got home last night.
Sorry about that, man. Sorry for your loss.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Yeah. BD, how have you been doing?
Okay. I've been quite opposite to Tricker, so I've been spending most of the time with the kids. So my wife's been traveling a lot. That's my second week alone with the kids right now, which kind of takes away a lot of my time, but it's good fun. It's always good fun with the kids.
Do you ever think about farming them out, or just do you ever leave them in their place for a while?
Yeah, I leave them all the time.
See if they can make it back. It's kind of a test.
Yeah. But they always
5
do.
miles, and then the next day is 6
Always.
Miles.
Yes.
How long does it take to
24
wash?
miles.
How long does it take to wash your hair, man? You got such long hair.
But it doesn't. I mean, there's no connection really. The kids' hair.
I'm talking about your hair, man.
No, I don't wash them.
You don't wash your hair?
It takes too long. No.
That's no rinse repeat for you.
No.
If you lived in the States, I'd think you're a surfer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, surfing in Belgium probably not
No.
possible. No. In the North Sea, no.
Well, to jump into it, first few weeks ago, we had our good friend Metal2Mesh, and it was really interesting conversation that we had with him about his background, how he got started with it, and working with Razbam and putting this stuff together. But he's a professional 3D artist, and it was really interesting to hear his backstory.
I think, for me, the most amazing part was his garage, or how you call it. I mean, where he keeps all the stuff, like the models and mannequins and parts of F-16 cockpit and everything else. It's like, we have some photos which you probably can post with the episode.
Yeah.
So the flight suits, I think he has 2 or 3. He said that when he was in Orange, France, doing the Mirage stuff, he got a flight suit from the French Air Force. And then he collected all the stuff for the boots, the kind of flight vests, everything else. So it's just sitting there. And the other one for the Harrier. And I think he has the third one for the F-15, so the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah, it was interesting, all the replicas, I mean, the real deals, but it's scanning it and getting the detailed scans of it. I think it's different than the mannequins that you have in your house, Tricker, or if you call them mannequins.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't.
You're not supposed to tell everybody about those. But no, I wasn't there for the interview, but I will say that the Razbam pilot models, I think, are my favorite. Like the Mirage one looks freaking realistic, like really good. and so is the Harrier one. So I really like the 3D models that they put into the cockpit.
Yeah, but they're 3D scanning everything. So those are real, no shit, flight suits, original ones, 3D scanned and then just poured it into the game.
I
which is
wasn't
great.
ready. I wasn't ready, BD, for the. I had a blurb
Sorry,
out.
sorry. I said shit.
Yeah,
You didn't do
Yeah.
it again. Wait, I said.
you said a naughty
said what?
word.
This one.
I wasn't ready.
You didn't expect it coming from me.
His podcast is PG-13,
And then some.
rated G or whatever it is.
Wait till we get to Sky Penis.
Let's just make that segue right now. So I think we try to touch on that. I don't know if we don't always bring it up, but we do try to make sure that Sky Penis is always something that's a recurring theme across all our episodes. So hopefully it's appreciated by the audience members.
With the focus on touch thing, as you said, right?
I'm curious though. Like, do you guys use the pilot models like when you're flying in the airplane, or do you need to take them away? Like, do you use the pilot model like as in like when you're
in VR? I always do.
you use it in the VR?
Yeah. I really like it. It feels much more in place.
Can you do you ever take it away, or can you actually like see all the switches? Because usually like with Track IR, I always have to take the pilot model away.
No, in VR you also have to take it away sometimes, of course. But in VR it like gives you so much more. It feels weird. In VR you feel being there really, but then not having a body is kind of like a bummer.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I mean, I've recently moved over to the VR for the most part. So when I do have the time to fly, or when I do fly, but I do, for the most part, I've had it turned off. But now it's, back. Hey, but to your point, it's like, where's that switch? Or I can't get to it with a mouse because I'm trying to, where is it? So the answer is I generally don't, but it does add a much better level of realism, I think.
I was just curious because I mean it seems like it takes them a long time to implement a pilot model, but then how many people actually use it? Because like I usually take it away, and then sometimes I put it back, but I don't know. It just depends on what airplane I'm flying. Like the F5, the switches are always in the way, so I always leave it. I always take the pilot model out. And the Mirage 2000, like I usually leave it in after I set some switches. Then I just leave the pilot model in. So I was just curious if I was the only one that was kind of like that, I guess.
In F-15E, there's a nice thing with the pilot model because he has fingers that are animated on the buttons. So when you push something on the stick on the throttle, the fingers will move there and push it. Looks pretty cool.
I saw Reflected actually has some kind of new animation going up with fingers. That
was pretty good. I commented I loved his thumbnail. It was a good thumbnail.
I need to watch it. I just saw it. He posted it, but I never watched it. But what was that? That was he used some kind of a glove or something? No.
I didn't actually watch the video. I just saw the thumbnail and I commented. I was like, this is an amazing thumbnail.
Yeah, it's ways to give hand gestures.
But he does put out like amazing content. If you've ever watched his World War II, he does F-14 too, like an F-14 startup. If you watch his F-14 and World War II startup videos, like they're freaking, they're really good, like top notch.
Yeah, but let's talk for a second about, let's go off on a tangent about your stuff that you put out recently. And I'm going to just say thank you because one of the things that if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And actually that whole code thing that like using, you can just press this button and do that shortcut was huge for me. So, and we're talking about is in one of his more recent videos, Tricker outlined being able to use how to, add a laser code for
the F-18.
So it was just a really nice shortcut. And I really appreciate your videos being able to go in there because either A, I'm going to learn something new, but it doesn't take up, 37 minutes, which is just hard to carve out to watch something. So thank you for that.
Yeah. That's one of my main complaints is my content's too quick, I guess you'd say. It's too fast. I'm more of like to the point kind of guy. Like I just want to get to the point. So like,
and your girl never. No, keep going.
I just like to get to the point. Like, quit beating around the bush. Just give me the gist. That's usually I probably learned that from my dad, but no, I like doing the 60-second shorts because they're good for refreshers because I fly every single airplane or helicopter in DCS, and then like even after a month, like not flying the Mirage 2000, I'm like, how the hell do I, do the stored alignment heading again or stored alignment thing again? Because I have no idea how to do it, and I just watched the 60-second tutorial. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. That's how you do it, and it's nice, for that. And like, it's kind of funny because I make the videos sometimes for myself because I'm like, I forget stuff, and I'm like, I always forget about the laser code thing for the F-18 because usually, I used to always have to input 4 laser codes for each code, hitting step, laser, code, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then this guy beyond 2K in my stream was like, hey, man, like you can just hit air to ground and hit code, and it inputs all the codes for you. And I'm like, well, shit. Like, I just learned something new. So, you're always learning something new. So I just like to pass it along to everybody else,
Yeah, no, that's I appreciate it. Like I said, I really appreciate it. But I think the other thing is that it may be too fast, but I'd rather have it. And again, I don't have a problem rewinding or going back and watching it 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I would say your 60-second videos are better than other 60-second videos. So, anyways,
I appreciate that.
So, in the world of good content, if you haven't checked out Tricker's stuff, it's really good and it'll get you up to speed fast and refreshers, which old man like me needs.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be doing some F-16 stuff later today, actually, so.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. I'll watch it.
Yeah. And I will say this, I haven't, I don't always, when I get the time, most of the time is by default for me is the F-18. But getting to see you, going in there in a minute and watching you fly like the F5, I'm like, man, I got to check that out again because that's really cool. And so it'll bring me back into it, and and then I'll put the bindings in and everything else. But it's fun because it actually triggers me to go and
the F5 is still my favorite. It's the most fun. I would say it's the most fun I have in DCS is the F5. It's just
Never flown it.
It's so simple. Like, it's just so simple, and then you just go out and kill everybody. Or be killed.
Well, there was a video that came out the other day by a Gonki, who is a friend of Movers, so it has a YouTube channel, and he was putting in the top aircraft that for BFM, and F5 is essentially at the top of the list, or one of the top. Because even though
was
it's
it
an older
like for
plane,
inside DCS or like real life?
For real life. So, for him, he said that's one of the top ones that's hard to fight. So check it out. He's, it was interesting, and interesting dude that has a lot of experience with it. So it was a long video.
I was trying to stop my Roomba. My Roomba just started, and it was about to come on over here and suck me up, suck on my toes.
See,
it gets really loud, and then it gets into the microphone. So
it's
when she's actually toast, what is it?
Well, what's your girlfriend's
It's funny because
name?
like sometimes
Roomba?
sometimes I'll be recording like a video. Like I try to like not do like edits. Like I try to make like a one like take video for recording like my videos. And it's really difficult sometimes because like you'll be like 5 minutes in, you're like, oh, it's going great, and then you say like something wrong, and you're like, I gotta start it all over again because I try to make it one continuous thing, and then like sometimes my Roomba starts, and then it gets really loud, and I'm like, like stupid Roomba, like now I gotta start all over again.
And just on again another tangent, if you haven't checked out Cats Riding Roomba on YouTube, absolutely and Shark, that is. So you need to check that. That I will put in the show notes.
Tricker, that my manual vacuum cleaner never does it on me. It's
No?
always waiting there.
Well, I like the Roomba because here's the testimonial. Like we're doing testimonials. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I like the Roomba because like I play beach volleyball, and when I come home, like I get sometimes I attract sand inside, and so it's just nice to always have the floors clean instead of having sandy floors. Even though I wash off outside, that still comes in The sand finds places to hide, if you will.
Oh yeah.
I see. Well, we don't want to know about all the Roomba action going on, but
Maybe we do. Maybe Roomba will sponsor our.
To find out more, on this story, a bonus episode.
the not safe
Behind
Come
the
back for the
scenes.
Tricker Roomba special. After hours.
Roomba after.
Where we break it down and we clean the Roomba and find out what's been sucked up.
Well, we have one, but I don't think it worked. I'll just switching it to a little bit more G. My kids pick it up when they're 4 and like pick it up and drop it. So if it works, I don't have any idea anymore.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So, but if you get a chance, just kind of back on topic for a second, if you get a chance, I think you'll really enjoy the Metal2Mesh. You can also check him out on, I think it's got on Twitter. And we'll put a link to his Twitter handle as well. So Metal2Mesh.
What is it? His Twitter is Metal2Mesh?
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
We'll put it on the notes.
I was going to look it up and follow it right now.
Yeah. No, doing a great job, really. So you've seen you talked about the pilots in Mirage and Harrier, but the cockpits as well. And also when you have a look at the F-15 and you look at the inside of the landing gear bay or whatever, just like it's amazing how many small pieces, all of them moving, are being modeled, which you'll never normally see when you fly them. So it's just amazing kind of attachment to details.
Yeah, no, definitely need to take a look at it. It's, and I'll say this, that I think that part of what I thought was really impressive is the passion for it. So it's not just a job. I mean, it's clearly not everybody's going to see every little nuanced detail of the aircraft, but I appreciate when they put it in there. And I don't think it's, comparatively, I don't think it's wasted effort. I think it's just part of the entire passion for that project in the aircraft. So really cool.
I also think it has something to do with the damage model, because as it gets more and more sophisticated, all those little pieces can be blown to pieces, and it's that's why they're there now, I guess. But I might be wrong.
That too. No, passion, bomb models, all good.
So you did say in the F-15 BD about if you flip switches, is it like all the switches, like the hand like moves, or is it just like stuff on the stick?
No, just stuff on the stick. Just the hand stays on stick control, and obviously only those switches that you can see. So the TDC, which is not, you cannot see it. It's not animated. But it looks pretty well. It's a good idea.
Nice.
And the other thing is this ghost stick and throttle. So instead of disabling them completely, they become transparent, which is a new thing too.
So like a spooky version, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Strike Spirit Eagle.
Nice.
APR 39 operational.
Hey guys, so we're back and we are now with Rob and with Tim from Metal2Mesh, and today in this short part of the episode we'd like to talk about more about the 3D modeling. Tim is working with Razbam among other projects, and he is the one behind the great cockpits of the Harrier, Mirage, and soon the F-15E Strike Eagle. And you remember that they went through some iterations, and currently the Mirage one or Harrier one are just amazing. So we wanted to speak to Tim a little bit about himself, his work, and how it's all done, all the magic on doing 3D stuff. Hi Tim, good to have you here.
Hi, nice to talk to you.
So can you tell us in the beginning about the Metal2Mesh, because that's how you're known, right, in the community, I guess?
Yeah, it started, I think, 2013 or 12, I can't remember. Started to make airplanes for myself because I used to work for other companies. Actually, my first one was with Abacus. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but that was back in 2001, and it brings back the memories of 9/11 when I was sitting there working on the airplanes, watching that. And then from there I went over to Lago, and I met Mathis. I always call him Matisse, but I met him, and we worked for Lago, and I did the FS Falcon. I did the Tornado, and I started working on a MD-80, and then uh, Mathis went to what is it? Aerosoft. So I went with him, and we did the new F-16, the Seahawk, Jayhawk, the A-10, and other scenery projects and Navy projects. Um, but then this, I had worked for Iris briefly, and then I wanted to go ahead and just start it for myself. So I started my own company called Metal2Mesh, and I met Larry Zambrano, Ron's brother, and then later I met Ron and started working with him on his Harrier for FSX, and I did his cockpit for him. And we became good friends. He's a great guy. He's like one of my best friends. He's like my brother. And then we got into DCS, and DCS was a whole new learning curve. But actually, when you're like a 3D artist or you're tormented, you gotta you always want to improve yourself. You always want to get better. You always want to improve your technique and make your work better. And so I figured since we started working in DCS, you're able to get a little bit of capital, and I figured why not reinvest back into myself and start making myself better, gathering tools to 3D scan, items that I can use as resource. Like I actually have a real F-16A cockpit. So if I need anything from that, it has the switches, the gauges, everything.
So you just happen to have an F-16A cockpit. How
Yeah,
did you get that?
it's actually the front main panel. It's got the
Okay.
radar. It's got the HUD. It's the glare shield, and most of the gauges except for the elusive fuel quantity gauge, which is really hard to find for that thing.
So how did you get this? I'm just
eBay.
really.
Yeah, yeah. I bought it from eBay. And the guy was a really nice guy. He wanted to sell me a B1 cockpit, but I didn't have enough money. And also a F4 ejection seat. But he freighted it. FedEx freighted it on a pallet, and I went and picked it up and put it together. But
That's fantastic.
it's just really collecting dust. But I can use it to like record switch audio or measure, because all the gauges are basically the same size. They're all like, I think it's 3 1/4 and 2/3 inch. So they're all basically the same size. So you can measure off of them and just get a real feel of how everything works.
Well, let me take a step back real quick and ask you just a little bit about you in becoming a 3D artist. How long have you been doing it? How did you know you wanted to do it, and how did you get started?
When I was 2 years old, I used to draw, and I was a really good illustrator. Really well. I mean, my curves were straight. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you know how when you make a curve, it's usually it wobbles. These curves are straight, and I got into like repeatograph pens, the $3 a piece markers, almost like I guess they would say the kids use them for graffiti, but it was my type of illustration. I was always into like Japanimation, so there would be a lot of details, a lot of inking, and it was just I could draw really well. And I went to like the Fort Lauderdale Art Institute, and I blew them out of the water. I was, like we would do these projects every week, and the next week the project was due, and the whole class would critique it. And when it came to my projects, people really couldn't say anything because it was just, But then I would say, yeah, I should have did this different. I should have did that different. But it was more of desktop publishing. This was I'm pulling 50 now, right?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
So I guess what do they call us, boomers?
Oh no, you're not a boomer. unless it's like 63, I think is the cutoff for the boomers.
Okay. All right. So I'm basically up there. I'm a half a century. So everything I was doing was 70s and 80s, 90s. Even back then, PCs weren't that great for doing stuff. I mean,
Right. Yep.
so everything was hand drawn, typeface, everything, and I didn't really get into computers until later on. I got well, everybody. I think everybody had the Commodore 64.
Yep.
And then we moved into the 80 what is it?
8086.
Yeah, the 8086, the 286, the 386 SX, the 486s.
Yep.
And then we went to the Pentium, and
Yes.
yeah, I had the Pentium 133 megahertz, and that's when I started using Adobe Photoshop, Corel Draw, and I had a job one time where I was drawing Looney Tune characters for this apparel company. They had a Warner Brothers license, and we had all these books on all the characters, and I was in the concept department, and so we'd make concepts for different T-shirts, like Bugs Bunny holding something or Tasmanian Devil. And then, one time I made like half Terminator, because this was around Terminator time. One time I made half Terminator and half Tasmanian Devil, but the Terminator was like in the shape of the Tasmanian Devil, all metalled out with the red eye, and it was really cool. But they couldn't use it, so. But then I was going to college and everything, and I don't know. I guess I just kind of started making models for Flight Simulator 5.1. I was making my own F-16 through that. It was Bruce Artwick, BAO Art. It was some kind of art program that was from BAO before Abacus got it, and I was trying to make 3D like VR well, we call them VR. Well, 3D cockpits, and that none of the gauges worked, but you could go in there, because I think like by that time Flight Simulator 98 had that ability, and I just kept going on from there, working and doing FSX. So it's kind of more of a love,
Yeah, it sounds like it was a calling for you, since I wasn't expecting you to go all the way back to 2, but holy smokes, it does sound like from the very beginning all the way up, it's just been to your point, a passion.
Well, I mean, I like illustration and I like mechanical. I used to be a factory trained Toyota technician from 92 to 95, where you could bring your car in and I can diagnose it in 20 minutes what's wrong. And at that time, as fuel injection was coming in, OBD2 was getting ready to come in, and turning wrenches was something that I liked too, because it's mechanical. I like to know how things work, and I've always loved aircraft. And so kind of when I look at a cockpit or I look at an airplane, I'm looking at the mechanical aspect of it as well. Not just the beauty of the shape and the lines and the intricate features or unique features it has, but more of like the guts of it, what keeps it together, what makes it strong,
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to sort of the intersection, you met Ron and started working on this. And was the first DCS piece that you worked on the Mirage, or what was the first piece that you did?
The Mirage I did. All right, I met Larry. Larry was doing all the coding for our Mirage 2000 for FSX, and I made a deal with Ron. Okay, you put Larry out for me to do my coding. I'll do your Harrier cockpit for FSX. And so Larry helped me out. Of course, he got the royalties from it too as well. But so I met Larry first actually, and then I made the deal, and I went to Ron and made another deal, and then we were able to just like kind of trade. I guess he traded his brother. I don't even know if this should be out. I don't even know if this should be out there. But he was like, yeah, my brother will do it. And I mean, Larry's a good guy and everything. So he had some guy doing a cockpit. I can't remember his name, but he had some guy doing a cockpit, and I guess he just flaked out. So he asked me to do it, and I was like, all right. So I got the diagrams of, the technical drawings. Well, they're usually in the manuals, but you can't really go off of them. I've learned over time that those drawings in the manuals are actually a little bit off or embellished or just wrong altogether. And so I started using that, and I just started making the cockpit, and I think I did it in a month.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what
But
is
so-
it? Oh, go ahead.
So well, how? I mean, let's suppose that you don't happen to have a cockpit of, I don't know, the Harrier in your hangar or basement or whatever, and you have to do it for DTS. So okay, you got those technical drawings, but you say they might be off. So how do you actually do it? You get access and try to scan them somewhere in a museum, or how? I mean, 3D scan
Well,
them.
we can't really. All right. So a lot of like Harrier, I don't believe the one we did is in a museum at the time. I don't know if they're in the museum now, but you can't really get access to them. And like, let's use the Mirage as an example. So when I first did the Mirage, I went off of a lot of pictures, and there were so many conflicting different types of Mirages. There was the RDM, the RDI, the RDY, all these different things, and they had so many different panel upgrades and configurations with the C version that when we started working with the French Air Force, I was like, wow, this is Disneyland. I can go to France. I can say oui oui. I can say how you doing and everything, and they treated me like a king at the airbase, at the Orange Air Base, and I got to fly the simulators on the airfield. Sit on a live ejection seat when I'm not supposed to, and get all the resources I need to upgrade the Mirage as it is now, as the S5, with the different upgrades going. So a lot of times, what we would do is if we don't have the resource, it's picture hunting, lots and lots and lots of picture hunting, and then you get these. So you start modeling it out, and then all of a sudden, you started working on this model, and all of a sudden, here comes another picture that just throws it all into chaos, and then you have to go and redo that area or fix it so it's correct, and it's really a headache, and it takes the most time. If I have this stuff in front of me, or if I have the information, the modeling process can go really quickly. If I don't have it, and then I have to search for it, and I have to like kind of figure it out, work it in 3 dimensions with the perspectives, and try to measure it off gauges and panel consoles and everything. So it gets to become a real headache, and it takes longer. And then when you find that golden picture that says, nope, you're wrong, a lot of it's scrapped or reworked or moved around, and it's really hard. So a lot of times you'll see these developers, they're making it off of pictures,
Yeah, and I don't want to ask. I mean, I'm gonna ask stupid questions because I have no idea.
Go for it.
So how do you get scale, and what are the tools that you use? Because I can only imagine a picture. You're going, is that button, is it
Well, usually
this
you can.
length or
Yeah, usually they kind of have like a standardization. So you have small gauges and you have the bigger gauges in a military cockpit, and they're standard size. So if you know that size of that gauge, then you can easily like draw it out on the picture and find the pendulum line, which is straight up and down, and then find the horizontal line, and you can start working out how long something is from a picture.
Gotcha.
But again, that picture has some weird angle, so it's not 100%. It's never going to be 100% unless you can actually get in the cockpit, measure it, or what I'm doing now is 3D scanning it. And this is not photogrammetry. This is not using a whole bunch of different camera pictures and having the computer compile a 3D mesh. This is a real 3D white light scanner that, oh my God, it's like game changer. It's the next thing. And
Can you go into detail about that? Because I did see, I think on your Twitter channel, you had a video of you scanning.
Oh, okay. So
Is that
what
right?
happened? Yeah, the stick, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the U.S. Marine guy we were working with for the Harrier, he was like, "Hey, look what I came across in the chat," and I was like, "Ooh, you want to send them to me? I'll send them right back."
He
And then
just happened to have that. Yeah.
well, he got it from, I think it was one of their simulators that they have in there. It's just laying around, and he thought I was joking and everything, and I kind of was, but he was like, "Okay," so he sent it. He shipped it to me, USPS. I got him. I scanned him as fast as I could, and I sent him back as fast as I could.
I remember that conversation. It was hilarious.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. So 3D scanning uses white spray, because 3D scanner can't pick up black colors or dark colors, and it can't pick up reflections. Okay. So I sprayed it. I have this spray called A Sub, and it's a really good spray, and it goes on powdery white, and then it evaporates off and doesn't leave no residue, no scarring or anything like that. So I sprayed it. I sprayed it with this A Sub spray, and I showed him a picture of it, and it was all white. And he was like, "What did you do? Paint it?" He had a heart attack, and I was like, "No, no." So, yeah. So that was the conversation, you remember, Woji?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That was
Yeah.
funny.
So, all right. What was we talking about? I got distracted. I'm sorry.
I mean, going back to, we talked about, you collecting the resources or assets,
Right.
and then aggregating them together as a starting point. And then even now, though, a really great process is if you can scan it. And that's
Yes. So, all right. So the 3D scanner, I was like, I made some money off of the Mirage and the Harrier, and I was like, I want to invest back into myself. I want to up my game. I want to take it to the next level, and I started looking at 3D scanners. I tried the photogrammetry, but I was noticing, yeah, it looks great when you see the photogrammetry with the textures on it. The textures hide a lot of the geometry imperfections that you can't really see. It's not very accurate. And then so I went and I found a decent semi-professional scanner for like $7,000. By the time that was all bought, it was like 8,000, and then I got the attachments with the HD scan, the color scan, and the turntable, because you kind of want to use the turntable for smaller items, better detail. And so, like that video you saw with this, I made some kind of jig where I could screw the stick onto it, and I just let the turntable work, and the 3D scanner sits on a tripod and it scans it. And the cool thing about this scanner is you can take it off that tripod and you can use it as a handheld. You can, and it does, I think, up to 500 thousandths of a millimeter.
wow.
It tracks your three-dimensional space, everything. So, but then that's when I also have three mannequins, fully dressed mannequins, and I know people are like, when they hear mannequins, they get freaked out. And they start wondering, is this guy weird, right? But they're in my garage. They're fully dressed. Don't worry. And so
They're clothed.
And they sit in F-16 cockpits, so they're cool.
actually, no, they're on the stand. So I had the mannequins, and when we went to France, the commander of the 2-5 Air Force gave me his flight suit. And then he also gave my fiance and myself a couple shirts and everything. He's a really nice guy. And so I started collecting the gear for the Mirage Pilot. I mean, collecting the survival vest. I had the flight suit, collecting the boots, the gloves, the G suit, which was a real pain in the ass, but I was able to find one in France. And they were like really hard to come by, but I dressed up this mannequin, but I got a special mannequin that you can articulate his shoulders, his arms, and everything, so you can put him in what we call a T-pose, which is what we use to set the character without any kind of animation or any kind of rigging, where when you do add bones and you skin his surface, then he can close his arms and move around like a regular person. They have like a biped, a skeleton inside. So you do all this with skin weights and everything. So again, the scanner was allowing me to I can hear that echo. The scanner was allowing me to 3D scan this pilot real time, get the full geometry of them, really well resolution, and I was able to put them in game. And that's where the Mirage VR pilot comes from, and the Mirage ejection pilot comes from. Is from a 3D scanner, and I had to work out, okay, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that. It's really easy. You can scan a pilot like in an hour, but it's the topology. You have to re-topologize that scan because those millions of polygons are so horrible and so
So, just jumping in to
Yeah.
re-topologize.
yeah.
I I I had whiplash. What does that mean?
Okay, so you have this 13 million polygon model, right?
Uh-huh.
The game engine is going to choke when it has to render 13 million polygons or move it around or hit light off of it or anything like that. So what you do is you create a smoother, less polygon shape in its place, in its exact place.
Gotcha.
You're basically taking the topology of that 13 million model and you're re-topologizing it into 60,000 polygons.
Gotcha. So you're sort of simplifying it so it's not as heavy, if you will.
Right, but you're getting these things called edge loops. Like let's say you have a cylinder and you have these loops that go around the cylinder. Those would be called edge loops, and you'd have them really close to an edge to give you a nice corner with the normals. And again, they're called edge loops. So you want to have all these edge loops set up in a specific way so it flows with the mesh. So it flows with fingers. So it flows with the arm. If you have straps, it flows with the straps. It flows with the legs. It flows in the directions that it's supposed to go to one be dynamic in movement, and also the other one to be rendering well.
On that note, if I may jump in, I don't know if it's already out there. If not, we'll delete it. But in F-15E, we'll have the fingers. Oh, there was a video of that, I think. Fingers moving on the HOTAS. So it's whenever you press a button or a switch, it's there animated, right?
Yeah, I made it. Well, again, so you have this 3D pilot, okay? And in this pilot, you have like a skeleton. You have like 3 spines, waist, the femurs, the leg. I forget the name of those bones. You have the arm bones, the humerus, all that. You even have shoulders and everything. And so the DCS one, all right, so DCS gives you, like back in early, when we first got into DCS, they gave us some SDKs, and they have the ejection pilot animated with their A10 pilot or their F-15C pilot. So you have the animations there, and you have the skeleton there. So if you were to make your own pilot, you could easily put it in using their animations. And so I would take that to make the ejection stuff. But the ED pilots only come with 2 fingers. You have a thumb, and then you have a middle finger. Yeah.
Sorry.
Unfortunately, yeah, you
So
can't.
there isn't.
You wouldn't believe how many times people ask me, can you make him shoot a bird?
Right.
I'm like, no, I can't, because the one finger controls all 4 fingers.
Ah,
Yeah. So when I had the hand on the stick, I was adjusting the thumb, and I was like, you know what? This would be great, because we actually animated the buttons on the stick, on the control stick. So if you don't have no pilot in there, you can see the castle switch going up and down. You can see the I forget the name of this. My brain is fried. The thing on the thumb switch on the side, auto acquisition switch. You can see the trim moving, the pickle going down, etc.
that's really cool.
So I was like, well, wait a minute, we already have the coders already put these animations in. I was like, screw it. Let me see. Let me see if I can move the thumb. And so I set up the thumb so it works with the button's animation. So when you're moving the button, the thumb automatically goes in the spot. Now I'm probably giving this. Now all the developers are going to have movable thumbs in their VR pilots. But anyway, so I was like, let me do that. And then one of the coders, Captain Smiley, does the flight modeling. He also does some systems and stuff. He was like, I was like, he liked it. And he was like, I was like, can you put some of that code magic on it, where you can kind of like work it so it's a little bit slower, but also responsive enough that it's not like lagging. Like you move your thumb and then, oh, this guy's moving his thumb a minute later. What's up? So he was able to do some special little code tricks in there in the timing and to get it to work, and it looks pretty good. So we were pretty cool about that. But yeah, we have working thumbs on the controls. I got to do it for the throttle. I haven't done it for the throttle yet, and I also got to do them for the back seat for the hand controller units. But yeah, it's just little things we think about. It's like, oh wait, it can work. Great, let's do it. You know.
Yeah,
But
that's
with the
really-
back seat, it's gonna be more difficult because you also have a normal throttle and normal stick, which
Yeah.
yeah, you'd have to be able to move hands to one or another sometimes. I don't know, or maybe just the controllers.
Well, that like a while ago, we were gonna set up click spots. I think I announced it on the Discord where if you click here, the hands go to there, or you click there, the hands go to, or you can click each controller and use your regular stick, so you didn't need to buy 3 sticks.
I would need a click stick, a click spot for a like face palm when I'm flying.
I don't know how you're doing that,
More
man.
often.
I don't know how you're doing that manual. I'm like, God bless you, man. God bless you. But yeah, so I was thinking, okay, so let's put the click spots there. So if the person does take flight, you click the stick, boom, the 3D model will grab the stick and grab the throttle. If you're using the hand controllers to, target something, right now they're on the hand controllers, but I figure I can get the thumbs to do what they need to do with those button arguments, and then once we click, he just moves his hand back over to the flight controls, and I can get this thumb to do for those buttons as well. Because when I did the sticks, and the sticks are actually 3D scanned, they're absolutely incredibly accurate. There's like an iconic, the B8 pistol grip. I know you guys know this grip because it's like in every old aircraft that's out there. I had one here, and so I 3D scanned it, and it's for the back seat, and then I got the front seat, and I got that through a friend who had one, and he makes high-end simulator sticks. I don't really want to say the company or his name or anything, because I don't want people thinking like, oh, let me contact him and see if he can get me some FSA, flight simulator sticks and stuff like that.
I think no, you don't have to name it, but if anybody's interested, you should reach out to Casmo. I'm just saying. So I know I'm joking. Actually. So I just
Actually, so he gave me the 3D scans of the F-15, the front seat stuff. The very famous, beautiful looking, better than the Hornet stick. I don't know. I'm really prejudiced towards the Hornet stick. The F-15 is like the daddy of that style stick, and so he gave me those actual ones, and I was able to. I again retopologized it to lower, and then I set everything up so everything is all accessible. So I sent Woji some screenshots where you see it in low poly, and then I have it where it's in high poly, and that's just by changing the iteration of the smoothing. Because of the way I modeled it with the edge loops, it allows you to go up higher in detail if you actually wanted to. But really, you don't need to because it's a game.
So,
but those, yeah.
No, I was just just thinking about the F-15 and kind of, drilling down on that on the F-15E. So how did you, and just looking at that as a whole, where did you get all the information and the data to start making those models?
Tons of pictures. I have a real F-15E MPCD. Just like I have those 3 pilots, the F-16A cockpit, I got a real MPCD. So I 3D scanned that. So that helped with a lot of the geometry. The MPDs basically have the same type of geometry. They're just 1 inch diameter wise. They have the same radius. They have the same measurement of the radius. Radius. They have everything's pretty much the same. It's just bigger surface and for the screen. So I was able to make the regular MPDs. But yeah, no, 3D scanned it. And then of course the small standby gauges. They're the 2 3/8, and you're just able to go off of there and eyeball it up as much as possible. Um, the exterior model, ED actually they gave us their exterior model, and then I just went through it and reworked it and tore it apart and stuff, and fixed a lot of different things and added to it, added a lot of detail, so that when you actually look up in the gear bay doors of the F-15, our F-15, it's what it looks like. It's got all the electrical lines, the hydraulic lines, the defueling cap, everything, even that locks the gear to the frame when it retracts. Um, so it's just a lot of it's with those things you can't really get in. They're not in a museum. It's still the Air Force's premier strike fighter.
Right.
If you got to go out and kill something, they can do it in a day with that thing, and it's
So
really hard to get access to it. But
No.
we also have, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
We
no,
also
go ahead.
have SMEs working in the project, and sometimes I'm able to get some things, but they're really tight-lipped. But certain things that aren't really specific that are towards the operation of it, or just small little things. I was able to get a lot of the technical drawings and blueprints, as you would call them, like their repair manual stuff.
Mhm.
So it really helped out.
That's really now from a time standpoint. I can only imagine how much time this takes you to make. It's got to be a ton.
Okay. Well, first let's do the disclaimer, because I know there's this big talking point. Oh, the F-15's been in development since 2012. Yada 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 yada. Originally, we announced it. We were going to do it, but we started to see that DCS wasn't mature enough for it. We started to see that we weren't mature enough for it. Okay, and we were just getting into the DCS core systems, so we figured we'd have to learn. So we started to say, okay, well, let's do the T2, because Ron was doing a T2, so I started working on a T2, and I was like, listen, the T2 is going to be trash. How many people really want a T2? Let's go for some gusto. Let's do the Mirage. So they took my Mirage from FSX, and we brought it in, and then we brought it in as DCS. It would give us a better understanding of how the screens, the displays work, and how all the coding works. And we had to learn. We had to familiarize ourselves to get better and to grow. And so we started to stay with that project, and then we went to the Harrier, because Ron loves the Harrier. So we were doing those, and then of course, we were kind of like wet behind the ears, and the community was complaining, was saying, hey, this ain't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. You guys need to fix it, you guys need to fix it. So what we did was, we had actually started going on the F-15. I started redoing stuff, and then we were like, all right, let's listen to the community. Let's shut down any F-15 work, and we're all just gonna focus on that stuff. So we were upgrading it, and so that's what they did. They upgraded, and the F-15. We were like, we're just gonna keep it off until DCS has a air-to-ground radar API, and then until we have that, then we'll wait. And then we started getting more coders on board, and we got the Robot Chicken God, and he's Robot Chicken God in the Discord. That's his name. His is Gallinet. I know his real name, but I guess they call him Gallinet in the Discord. But he's got like a avatar of a chicken, right?
Yep.
So they call him the Radar Chicken God, not Robot Chicken. I'm sorry, Radar Chicken God.
I like that better.
Yeah,
But they're both good.
Yeah. You've seen Robot Chicken, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So the Radar Chicken God made the Mirage's radar, and I guess a lot of people say it's like one of the most accurate or most complex radars in DCS. The guy is really good, really smart, really. He's just, I don't know. He's like physicist level.
Yeah, I second that. If you look at the ground radar in F-15 and the ground mapping and the detail you can get there, it's absolutely mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's gonna blow people's brains out when they're able to figure out how to use that radar and go into HMR. It's gonna be like game changer because now you can target something through the clouds 40 miles away. It's absolutely beautiful. And then you just press a button and your T-pod goes right to the target. So we started getting these new guys, and we got the radar chicken god, and he started. So then we started thinking, okay, I think now is the time. Not me, but everybody. Now is the time to let's resurrect the F-15E out of the shelf and start working on it harder. And Ron came to me. He was like, "Hey, I need you to do this. Pull out no stops." So I started doing that. I started collecting flight gear, PC-15 harness with integrated LPU-9 life preserver. I got that from eBay. I already had the G suit, the flight suit, the harness, and the life preserver was a hard one. And then I got the Snaptrack vest, and I got a Beretta, put it holstered on his vest, on his survival vest, and started scanning, started going to town. And we had so then we resurrected, and that's when it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember, before COVID. We still get flack for it, but hey, there's nothing you can do about it. And so that's where the project came from. So like way back then, we announced it, we were going to do it. We realized we couldn't. We realized, for our own selves from DCS, let's postpone it. We did it, and then we started bringing it back up again, and here we are. Was that your question? I can't remember. I get so talkative and off topic.
No, this is all great. This is great. No, I think, in terms of, when you take a look at all the things. Now, I'm absolutely amazed at what you're buying on eBay. I had no idea this stuff was available.
It's hard to find. It used to be pretty cheap pre-pandemic, but now I think all the prices went up everywhere.
Yeah, certainly for shipping. But I will say that I do think, you've got 3 mannequins. You probably have great conversations with them. And,
Yeah, Rob, I sent you some photos on Discord, and if Tim, you're okay with that, we
Yeah,
can
yeah.
maybe post them again with the podcast,
Yeah,
so people can see them. Yeah.
yeah.
this is
I think
great.
I gave you side by sides, and you can see the 3. I got the French guy, the Marine, and the Air Force guy. And I think you probably see my 3D printer in there as well.
yeah, this is great.
Yeah, with the sticks, what I want to do is I tried to shop them to Verpal. I mentioned them to Thrustmaster on their Twitter, but they don't listen to you.
Yeah.
I messaged Winwing about, hey, I got CAD files because I took the 3D scans. I don't do polygon game modeling. CAD is a totally different beast. It's a very crazy beast. I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I got my subscription to a CAD program. It's just like I can't get my head around it. But I had a friend. I paid him money, and he CAD'd the grips for me. So I have CADs of the grips. Of course, they're not engineered to put buttons or switches in them or anything, or to hold a controller board inside or anything like that. But they're the actual shape of the real grip. So I tried to shop it around to these different, not really even shop around. Hey, I'm giving it to you. I just make sure you just do it right and, give me a free one. But they didn't want it. Nobody wants it. It's like, I can't believe this. Winwing, I'd give them, I would, when I'm going to do, like right now I have the analog UFC. I'm gonna start the digital UFC. The digital UFC is a little different. You got more rectangle buttons. You got different knobs. It's a little bit different shape. It sticks out a little bit further and everything. So when I did the digital UFC, I know a couple of people in Discord, they want them. I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll give it to you. Just let me finish it, and I'll give you the mesh. You can go at it. I have no problem with that. So I was even Windwing, if they're gonna make a MIPS system like they have for the F-18 for F-15, hey, here's what the MPDs look like. Here's what the MPCDs look like. Here's what the UFC looks like. You guys can get it all to scale. Here's the grips. You guys can go to town and have exact. I mean, I don't understand why they want to use it, but you know,
Yeah, I don't I have no idea how they come up with their product roadmaps or they do it. It's impressive, but yeah, I don't. Maybe they, are they tricking you, or is it a trick or something? Who knows?
I don't know, but like honestly, like comparing the Thrustmaster Hornet stick grip and the Windwing one, the Windwing's off. You know.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah, it's just it looks like it's smaller and it's just I don't know, it's a little bit off. I actually compared like the Harrier stick is the same exact thing as the Hornet, only the trim and the sensor select switch are switched. But I compared the two, the real one and the Hornet from Thrustmaster, and it was pretty close. I mean, yeah, there's some things that are different. I guess that's more of a structural thing for the grip, but it was very close. And I was hoping that okay, if Windwing's going to do this or if another company's going to do this, hey, use the scans, get them right. I don't want to have that doubt because even myself, any artist, we can look at something and some are better than others
Hmm.
where we can look at a photograph and we can interpret the curves and we can 3D model it and it will look just like it. But when you actually put it up to the real thing, there's a slight angle that's off or there's a slight position that's wrong. But when you look at it, it looks right. And that's why I got into 3D scanning because I want to make sure, okay, this is all correct. I can rest my mind knowing, okay, that's how it is, and I don't have to go any further.
And in DCS, you have a lot of rivet counters, so it's important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're a very tough community, very tough,
Yeah.
and they push you. They push you to be better. But
Yeah, I didn't mean it to be negative. To the contrary, I mean,
yeah,
I see the same exactly.
yeah. They did some hit thing where I said that, and it's like they got all upset and posted it and called us names and stuff. But let's keep that out. But I mean, it pushes you. It's a very positive thing, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at trying to get as much detail as possible, and if you're, a type A like a lot of the folks in the community, but what you have to do is take a look at some of the pics that you've put out there already, and it's just amazing. And I
thanks.
don't, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, but just look at the landing gear or the stuff you can see inside jet, which you would normally never see because you don't even look from that angle, even if you do a F2 external view. So the level of detail again is completely mind blowing, and it's just amazing what you're doing, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, I got people got a butt hurt when I started doing the Axis, the avionics space, and I saw the black shark, and I thought it was incredible. I was like, this is incredible. ED really outdid themselves. This is fantastic. And I think someone in ED or something announced, hey, maybe we'll be doing walkarounds on the ground. Because, pilots do a lot of, they check their own aircraft. They're not going up on something on somebody's word. They're going to inspect it themselves. And if you guys want to do the real deal and live the life of what it would be like in being a fighter pilot, well, that's what happens. So when I saw that with the black shark, I was like, I want to do that because I know I had to do the damage modeling. I know the damage is something gets shot, you can see inside, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna and we figured out a way to make the doors open, and when they close, they hide everything. Turns it off. And we figured out a way that when you get damage, it turns it back on for the damage underneath the doors, or unless the damage is real bad and the door is completely gone. But yeah, I did all that, and then I went to the radar chicken god, and I was like, "Hey, let me ask you something. What if I was to animate the radar antenna, and then when like let's say the nose gets blown off, can you make it so that's where it last stops working? So it has the position of the radar it last was in right before it shut off? And he was like, yeah, sure, what the heck. And so he did that, and then now you see the famous the radar dish moving, sweeping side to side, and now we have a real working radar. We have it in 3D too, but it shuts off when you get the nose blown off. But he did it for a test. He was like, yeah, this is really a good feature for debugging it and how it works and how the antennas, where the antenna's pointing and everything. So, you might not ever see it, but we made a little fun with it, and everybody got all upset. I was like, what's going on? Why is everybody upset? It's like, that's just cool.
You should hope you don't see it, because that would mean you got shut up pretty badly
Yeah.
while flying. So yeah, you don't want to see that.
I mean, what's the average user in DCS? What are their video cards? Like, what kind of? I mean, usually the average user is, they know they have to have a decent computer. Of course, you have young
They do.
kids that can't afford it, and I think those are the ones that constantly gripe. But I mean, what is the average video cards?
I
Because
think the average gamer is not a kid for DCS. I'd
Yeah.
say most of us are, of the 30s, 40s, 50s, something like that.
yeah, we got wives yelling at us. Why did you
Yeah.
spend all this money with Nvidia? Yeah, but
Well, I mean, it's true until you start bringing more money because of that money you invest. Like probably is your case, or I know my case. It's
Right.
easier that
Oh.
way. But if you don't do that, it's tricky.
yeah, well, it's a tax write-off. I'm confident. I'm like, hey, Uncle Sam, look at that scanner. Look at that computer. Thank you. You know. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
I was gonna say if I don't have the direct business expense for all of it. I'm working on that, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's a challenge.
Well, what's your video card?
I have a 4080.
Oh, yeah. Then you can run this thing well.
Yeah, I don't have any issues. I'm
Yeah.
not complaining.
Yeah. I mean, we had one of the testers. He had a 1050 Ti, and he was like, he was getting really low frame rates in the cockpit. But then he turns around, they spike up to 30, goes forward, they go low again. If he goes outside, they're at 30. So, with the other guys, how we were like, okay, radar saturation, okay. I didn't believe it at first, but he proved me wrong, so I conceded and gracious, and so the guy, so he has VRAM saturation. You've got to have some kind of VRAM to run this game, because these textures, I mean, the problem with two-seaters is you have two cockpits, so you have double the textures, and it's not like the Apache. The Apache's kind of separated. You're kind of separated. You only see a little part of it, so you can hide a lot of things. But like these open cockpits, like the F-14, the F-15, now the F-4 that's coming out, you can have all this space in between the pilot and the back seat, the Wizzo or the Rio, and it has to be detailed because they're gonna sit back there with nothing to do and look around and like get up underneath and look, and so it has to have some kind of texturing. It has to have some kind of model there, and it kind of really, we're really pushing the boundaries with this airplane, with just the sheer amount of geometry and texturing. We're trying to keep it low, but it's pushing it. Like the 280s can run it. The 10 series, I think the 1080s can run it better than the 1050. 1050 Ti only has 4 gigs of memory. Well, anyways, we found out if he lowers his resolution down to like medium, it works fine. He doesn't have the radar saturation and stuff, and not radar, the VRAM saturation as much, because the MIT maps. So the MIT maps, this is what the radar chicken guy we were talking about in one of our conversations. He was saying that the game engine now can actually just take, like, the MIT maps, right, where you have the big texture, then it divides it down, and then divides it down, smaller and smaller textures.
I think if you want, I think a lot of people, including myself, are not familiar with that. So, can you get a little bit more detail on that?
Okay, well, textures have what they call bitmaps. I don't actually know the acronym name. Um, and what happens is you have let's say a 4K texture.
Mhm.
Then inside that texture file, there's another texture that's a 2K texture, and then a 1K texture of that same texture, just smaller size.
Okay.
And it goes all the way down to I think like 256 or 64 by 64 pixels. Okay, and this is
Okay.
usually for something that's far away, like if you have an airplane that's 100 miles away and it's using like 4 pixels. Well, it's gonna need to put a texture on it, so it uses the smallest texture it can, and it just
Got
uses
it.
that little bit resource. So the game engines actually can utilize this map texture so that when you turn down, like I keep it at high, the texture
Mhm.
setting, and I think it's like one of the top ones in the regular UI. um, if you turn it down to medium, it drops it down to like 2K textures, or it drops it down to 1K textures, and it's actually using that one of those maps. It doesn't load everything else in the VRAM. It just loads that map, and it can save your performance if you have a low VRAM um, video card. That's why all
Gotcha.
these video cards are going up 8, 10, or 12 gigabytes, or even like the 90 series are doing 24 gigabytes. It's because the VRAM. I don't know. Everything changes with computers and
Mhm.
graphics. I remember a long time ago, AGP was the way to go. Oh no, they went back to PCIe Express. But yeah, so
Well,
it's
that makes sense. It certainly, um, I like I said, I from time to time I upgrade, and I have no complaints on it. But
yeah.
I think inevitably, as the games continue to grow, with the exception of, what happened with multi-threading, and now you kind of get, something that was not doing that great now might have a second life on it.
Yeah.
For the most part, technology always needs more, and especially with games.
Right. But we wanted to try to keep the F-15 close enough so it's like not we didn't have to go and upgrade it all over again in a year,
Yep.
or in 2 years. It can have a longer lifespan, future proofing they call it.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I'm worried about those guys that have the smaller video cards. But I did do something with the wings. All right, like on the F-15, they have these stains from this sealant that they use for the fuel tanks. And I guess out in the heat or something, it like turns liquidy, and then when they fly in, it puts these nice little dirty, ugly patterns on the wings, and then sand gets on it, and it just looks horrible. But it's a beautiful thing when you're looking at the F-15, right? The
Hmm.
E.
Yep.
So we have two versions. We have the clean and we have the combat version of the paint of liveries. Okay, and the cleans, they're clean. It's really just one texture set that we're using for it. And then the combat version, what I did was I split it up to 3 different texture sets. And what happens is, all right, so we have like, let's say you have two wings, right? So one wing will have that certain design of that staining from the fuel tanks, and then the other wing will have a certain design from that staining to the fuel tanks, right? So that's one set. Okay. So then I have another set. The right one has certain design but less. The left one has a certain design but less. Then another set, less and less. So you still have a little bit of it and a little bit of, and then it goes up in increments. So you have three different ones, low, medium, high, of these stains. Now what I did was, so in the Lua, so like in the Lua, one livery is like 22 megabytes, which is a decal for the squadron or the CFTs or the nameplates. So it's just 22 megabytes for one squad for one different livery, and then the Lua says, okay, I'm gonna have wing A, wing B, and that's it. Or I'm gonna have wing B and wing C, because there's A, B, and C. It's 1, 2, and 3. So I had it so it sets it up. So now when you load up the airplanes, not all the liveries have the same exact stains for the combat versions.
Mm.
You can switch them. I think you get 9 different combinations. and that would keep the storage size on the SSD slower, and also it'll keep your VRAM lower for, like, let's say if you're flying a buddy and he's using maybe wing A on his right side, and you're using wing A on your and you're using a wing A, you're using a wing A on your left. So it kind of helps just to I made it modular. So the tails have their own folder sections, the wings have their own folder sections, the noses have their own folder sections, and it just keeps them all together, and it can mismatch them and do it that way.
That's really cool. I think it's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a few skins already in the F-15E. So
Yeah.
people will be happy with what they get when it's out. All right. I mean, that's super interesting, and so many things I've never thought about or knew. It's amazing. So anything you'd like to add you didn't talk about, or some nice surprises you have for us that you can say something about for the future?
Surprises. I don't.
Huh. The surprises, so we don't have to reveal them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I kind of like ran my mouth too much, but
No, not at all. No, actually, not at all. It's perfect. This is great.
I mean, all I know is it's actually incredible how much this plane incorporates all the systems together. And I'm really proud of the guys. I'm proud of Larry. I'm proud of Radar Chicken. I don't know if I wanted to say their names, but I'm proud of. And then even Woji, he's tackling that manual. It's like, man, I feel so bad for this guy. I'm like, I know he's got to explain all this stuff and organize it and I forget how you call it. Just present it in a way to make it so much easier to learn. And I mean, I hope we can knock this out of the park for the people who bought it, and I hope that they'll enjoy it and get a lot of use out of it, because it's more of a labor of love, and I just hope we can impress them and make them happy.
I think they'll be happy. Yeah, I think they will. From what I've seen so far in all the departments, it's gonna be great.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm so nervous. But I'm so happy that that we're able to get this thing going. All right. Anything else you guys want to ask?
I think Woji wants to go to bed, but no, I'm just kidding.
It's only 11.
Yeah, but no, I think this has been great, and I'll tell you what, I learned a ton, and I'm sure I'm gonna have other questions. So hopefully you'll be open to coming back and talking with us again. This has been a lot of fun.
I told Woji I would like to get the whole team. Maybe after it's released or something, if we could do a whole team kind of thing. Because I'm sure you'd like to hear their perspectives, but I'm happy to come back. But I know
I think it'd be great I'd love to hear about the entire process and everything else, and I think the audience would too. But
Yeah, well, we can think how to do it, like three-part podcast or 5-part, probably. But
yeah, well,
it's gonna be interesting.
in one part we will be trying to figure out everything that you've bought off eBay, and then
I got receipts, so if you need them, I got.
no.
I had to buy a French helmet, a GNU 316, right? I had to get that from South Africa. It was so hard to get that helmet. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
So I do have one question. So that sometimes what we find is that there are pilots that like to draw certain things in the sky. As an illustrator,
yes.
Is there anything that you would recommend that they consider to get that straight curve?
I'm not a doctor.
Well,
All right. On that note,
yeah. Okay, thank you very much for coming on the show. And we hope to have you back.
My pleasure.
It was good fun. Yeah. Take care. Thank you.
It was nice meeting you, Rob, and Woji. I'll see you on the other side. And
Yeah.
Hey.
That was good.
happy Good Friday.
Happy Good Friday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy Good Friday, guys. Have a good Easter, and see you after that.
Take care, guys.
We'll keep on cracking. See ya. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Red 9 Slasher 02 copies, clear to engage. Danger close, within 45 meters from friendly.
So the next episode that we've got, that you're going to be able to listen to is with Steve Davies, who is the founder and host of the 10% True podcast, as well as renowned prolific author and aviation photographer. So he's it was really interesting to talk to him, and he's actually worked with Razbam as well, and a digital version of his F-15E book is going to be included with the module as well. I think that's correct, right, BD?
Yeah, for download, exactly. So you'll get it. You get that. You get the manual, and you get everything bundled with the F-15E when it's out.
Yeah. So I thought it was really interesting talking to him and his path into aviation journalism, if you will. What a great experience. So he didn't even as he tells his own story, didn't necessarily have a background in it, but got going with it. But how many aircraft did he say he flew in?
I don't remember.
But he had like 20. Yeah, over 10
times. Like I know, but he had lots of flights in the backseat and many different aircraft.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, and he said that, he kind of laid out how he kind of got going in it, but, it's great. And if you haven't checked out the 10% True podcast, you need to, because it's a really great deep dive on that. And he's going to be working with us on Authentic Media. If you haven't checked out Authentic Media, you need to do that. But he's going to be doing a series with us on the F-35. So he's partnering with us on that. So it's going to be pretty cool.
Coming back to what you said a moment ago, I think his story is amazing, showing how what you can really achieve, even if you cannot be a pilot, how close you can get to being one if you really want to. I mean, he's shown that you get to fly with those guys, and the story he'll tell when he was flying with the Swiss Air Force. Mm-hmm. Over the mountains and landing somewhere like in the fog, just between the mountains. It's just absolutely amazing what they've done there with him as a civilian in the backseat. So it's a good story.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, and it was funny because he came back to us and said, "Well, I'm the one doing the interview, so it was a bit strange for him to be interviewed by us, but he is an aficionado of the F-15E." And, it was great to hear his stories across the board and about the different aircraft he's flown. So it's good stuff. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Air Combat Sim podcast. Today, we are lucky to have Steve Davies from the 10% True channel, as well as Baltic Dragon. And I am Rob Grady. On our episode today, we're going to be talking... get some information more about Steve and talk about the F-15E. And while we probably won't be talking about any of the super secret details, what we will be talking about is what's coming up and some of the work that Steve's done in the past and how he's going to be contributing to I believe, some documentation to the project as well. I think that's open source. So Steve, welcome. Can you take a couple minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself? I've got some more pointed questions, but better to have you tell us on the front end.
Well, Rob, first of all, thanks for having me on the channel. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm not really used to doing any talking. I run, as you said, the 10% True podcast, which is really just me sitting down talking to principally fighter aircrew about their experiences, their careers, what it's like to fly, go into combat and have a career in that field. And my thing is to ask a short question, then stand back and not talk for 20 minutes. So this is an interesting experience for me. So a summary of who I am. So I'm in the UK, as some people might be able to deduce from my accent. And I have spent the last 23 or so years as an aerospace and defense photojournalist. And most of that's been full-time, but of late, the last 10 or so years, I've done that part-time. And I suppose my association with the F-15 goes right back to the beginning because it was the first book that I wrote. So I worked over the course of my career for all the big aerospace and defense publishers. I wrote 19 books in total. Wrote scripts for television programs, appeared in television programs, wrote part works, did the magazine stuff. I did pretty much everything you could do, sort of print journalism and broadcast journalism. But the first subject that I wrote about was the F-15, so that's kind of where my heart is closest, if you will. And I think I did maybe sort of 6 or 7 books on the Eagle and the Strike Eagle in total, the latest of which I think came out sort of 4 or 5 years ago. It's the Haynes F-15 workshop manual. And then these days I run the 10% True podcast, and I work with people like BD to put together campaigns for flight sims, which is my other passion in life. And then as an extension of that, occasionally working with people like Razbam on their Strike Eagle module to help bring it to market and to provide some input and some reference material if I have it. And in this case, to actually go to market with a free copy of one of my books. So I'm sure we'll get onto that later. I don't want to turn this immediately into some kind of promotional advert, but that's the relationship. That's who I am. That's what I do.
So how did you get started? Did you always have an interest in aviation? I mean, I would assume that you have an affinity towards aircraft, given that's the direction you've gone down.
Yeah, I was like probably 95% of the people who are going to be listening to this, which is that when I was 4 years old, I was telling people I was going to be a fighter pilot, and it didn't happen for me. I was never able to do that medically. I couldn't get into the aviation program, let alone be a fighter pilot. So I grew up around fighter pilots. I lived at a village in Suffolk, which was not far from RAF Lakenheath, where there was F-111s based at the time, and that was not far from Mildenhall. So I'd see the SR-71 go overhead all the time, and that was my upbringing. So in my village, I had the influences. I hung around fighter pilots. I was near an airbase. I saw fighters all the time, so that's what I wanted to do. And then that sort of carried through then to my adulthood, even though I knew I wouldn't be doing that as a career. And there was a point in which, when I was in my early 20s, it dawned on me that I could kind of live that life altruistically by being an aviation journalist. And so I had been in a sales role prior to that. I'd spent 4 or 5 years in a sales role. I owned my own company, so I was kind of used to cold calling. I was used to picking up the phone and saying to someone, "Hey, I've got an idea and you should be interested in it, and this is why." And I thought, well, I'll phone up a publisher. And I just picked the world's largest aerospace publisher because I thought, why not? And I phoned them up and I said, "Hey, you need a book on the Eagle because there isn't a really good book on the Eagle that's out at the moment. And so therefore there's demand, but there's no supply. So it's a logical argument that you should be interested in." And I couldn't believe it because they said, "Okay, yeah, let's meet and talk about it." And the way that publishing used to work, and I think it still does, is that we met in a pub. So we met at a pub, had a ploughman's lunch, which for anybody who's not familiar with that's basically a sandwich with cheese and pickle and some onion in it and a couple of pints to wash it down. And I talked to the managing editor of this publishing company, and he said to me, "What experience do you have?" And I said, "None." And frankly, I could barely string a sentence together on paper, but he didn't really seem to be bothered by that. And then, lo and behold, he commissioned me to write the book. So I wrote that book, which is actually the book that's being bundled with the module. So it's a big book on the Strike Eagle. It tells the story of the aeroplane that hadn't been told before, at least not to the extent that I was telling it. And aerospace editors saw it, and they thought they saw something in me and the way I wrote and the things that I was writing about. I always sort of took an operator's perspective. So the 10% True channel now is about talking to operators. Who are you? What do you do? How do you fly the aeroplane? How do you employ it in combat? What are the challenges? What do you think about? What sort of scares you? So that was the approach. Whereas previously, I think most writers had thought a lot about the historical context. What aeroplane was it? Where did it go? When did it go there? How many went there? How long did it stay for? How many bombs did it drop? I wasn't really thinking that way. And I suppose that's part of the frustration then of being a sort of wannabe fighter pilot and never being able to do it, that you want to know about those things. And so the aerospace editors saw that, and they decided it was something they wanted. And so really by fluke, by chance, I was given more work, and it turned into a career when I only ever thought it would just be one book.
So how do you get started? I mean, even so, today if you say, "Hey, I'm going to go write about the F-15E," how do you get access to it? How do you, how do you even walk? Just call them up, say, "Hey, I'd like to come take a look at the aircraft," or how do you start with that?
It's quite straightforward to go and get access if you just want to have a look. So, the Air Force, the US Air Force, is really well geared up to doing public affairs. So they, all air bases, all wings will have a public affairs, a PA team, and their job is to generate publicity for the wing. And then, the MAGCOM, so the, Air Combat Command or AFMC, whoever it is, will have their own PA as well. So sometimes it gets, referred to them to approve. But if it's just, I want to come to Lakenheath, I want to see some Strike Eagles, talk to some aircrew, and what you get out of it is that I'll write a piece in a magazine, and then people will say, isn't the US Air Force cool, and isn't it great that they're stationed here in the UK, and we don't mind the jet noise because this is what we get for it. We get, the protection of our freedoms. So that's a fairly straightforward proposition. What's trickier, and what was always my end goal, was to fly the aeroplane. So I, again, the extension of, I want to be a fighter pilot, I can't be a fighter pilot, so how do I try and see what that life would have been like? The ultimate extension of that is to then go and fly the aeroplane. And that's a trickier proposition. So I didn't get to do that until I'd written the first 2 books, I think it was. So I wrote 2 books, and then the Air Force said, okay, yeah, we will take you seriously now. And that sort of opened the floodgates for me to go and fly.
That's pretty cool. Now, and you said you've for 23 years, 19 books. Yeah. And you've covered, I've got a couple on the shelf. So I've got the F-15. I think you've got Red Eagles, F-16, and you've got a bunch of the Haynes workshop books too, right?
Yeah, I did a couple that are not attributed. So that, sometimes you work for a publisher and they're getting a bunch of writers to put some, you write 3 or 4 chapters, and then they put the book together and they say this is it, and the name of the editor goes on the book. So I did a couple that were like that, but most of mine are what referred to as monographs. So they're just about one particular aeroplane. So F-15, F-16, F-18, A-10, B-52, SR-71. There may be some other aircraft, but I always focused on really the pointy nose fighters. That's where that's where my interest is. That's what I think is sexiest. So that's what I ended up writing most about. And because I wanted to go. So one of the things that I wanted to do always as a writer was do my own research. Today I find it very frustrating. I won't go off on a tangent, but I find it very frustrating that a lot of blog sites in the aerospace and defense space really exist by taking other people's work and rebundling it and putting a clickbait title on it, and then they publish, and that's their model. And I was the opposite of that. I wanted to go out and speak to people. I wanted to get first-hand accounts. I wanted original sources. I wanted to go and look through archives and go and interview engineers who have been responsible for building aeroplanes in order to tell the stories. So, that's what I did, and that's where the focus was.
That's very cool. Have you, now, in terms of the aircraft that you've flown in, which ones have you been invited to?
I have been really, really lucky. I've flown most of the fast jets. So I've flown F-15 B, D, E, the F-18D, and the Super Hornet, the Typhoon, all the F-16s, F-5, T-38, Hawk.
Wow.
Maybe some others mixed in there. So I've been really lucky.
Yeah, I would say you've been extremely lucky. But, I mean, in 23 years, but holy smokes, that's fantastic. Of those aircraft, which one was your favorite?
What I would say is I wouldn't pick an aeroplane. I would pick a flight, which is tricky because I think I've flown 25 or 26 times. But I would pick a flight, and that was flying with the Swiss Air Force in the back of one of their D-model Hornets. And it was just incredible because, first of all, the scenery, you're flying up over the Alps. It's, Switzerland, as anybody knows, or if you go and look at a map, you'll really get an idea of. It's a tiny, tiny country with very little airspace. They don't have much to protect, but they protect it, with alacrity. So our sortie was to go up and do a couple of things. So they'd recently updated the flight control logic in the aeroplane to include something they call pirouette logic, which was the ability to go up, put the aircraft effectively into a tail slide and keep it in the tail slide, and then use the rudder to move the nose around to effectively yaw, so you could pirouette on your way down. So we did that. We went up and he showed me the pirouette logic, and then he said to me, "You try it." So I did the pirouette from the back seat.
Well,
And then he said, "Okay, well, now what we'll do is we'll go and fly into the secret airbase." I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Well, we've got a secret airbase. It's built into the mountains. We're going to go and fly an ILS approach into it, and it's a base called Meiringen, and it's sat in a valley between two mountains." And we did a no-kidding ILS approach into it, where the visibility, I think, was less than, I don't know what it was, less than a mile and a half, something like that. So all I saw as we were flying in was the peaks of the two mountains, a bank of cloud, and we went into the cloud, and I knew that the peaks were narrowing because we were entering a valley. So we flew this ILS approach into that, and then we got to the tactical portion of the flight, which was just phenomenal because they really did a no holds barred demo for me of how they would patrol airspace. And so what we did was it was a 2v1, so we had one Red Air Hornet, and we didn't know where he was going to be. We just knew he was going to be out there, so we had to find him. And we had then the Blue Air, we were number 2, and then our flight lead was, of course, in front of us, number 1. So we are low level because we want to be looking up because we don't want the ground clutter from the radar. And we're looking at this sort of tract of airspace where there are these contrails from the airliners that are flying through Swiss airspace. And so we're kind of looking a little bit low, looking medium altitude, looking high. We're flying along at low levels, so we're sort of swooping in between the tops of the mountains. And then one of these contrails just suddenly turns and points at us. And my pilot, this guy called Elvis, said, "Oh, okay, there he is. We can see him visually." So, we went through the process of locking him up on the radar, and I watched all that happen, and I can see the roar. And, we're now starting to get spiked by him. And then we go into a lead trail where the objective is that one person is going to VID him, so visually identify him, and the other person will then shoot him. So we go first. So the lead falls back, he gives us the lead, we go first. We go nose to nose with this guy. He's coming downhill, we're going uphill. And I don't know how close we were. There's normally a 1,000-foot bubble. I suspect we were on the edge of that 1,000-foot bubble, but we go, so it's just like the scene from Top Gun where we go past him. And, Elvis calls, a VID bandit or whatever it was that he says. And then we pull up over the top of him. And as we pull up over the top, we probably got to about 30,000 feet. And he just bunts the nose. We're inverted. He bunts the nose. And I just sit there, weightless, upside down. These little grains of dust have risen up from the floor, floating in front of me. It's an azure blue sky. And I look down and I can see the top of the Matterhorn. And I'm just looking down at the top of the Matterhorn. And then meanwhile, we snap back into reality, put some G's on the aeroplane, and then we can see our flight lead going in and killing the other guy. And so that was probably the coolest flight I took. I've done some really cool flights, but that was probably the most memorable one.
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And so of that sounds like they really opened and gave you the show.
Yeah, cool. It's sometimes a mixed bag. Sometimes they're the opposite of that. Sometimes they're sort of ultra cautious, ultra secretive, ultra protective. But those guys on that day were pretty open.
So if you're flying you've flown with the Swiss guys, with US, UK, some others, do you see a big difference between the attitude or how the aircraft behave or the pilots, or is this some kind of level playing field for all of them? So
yeah, I think it's a level playing field. I think it's, people who do the job often say to me, being a fighter pilot is a state of mind rather than a job description. You can have guys who are fighter pilots who are flying bombers or tankers. So inside there are fighter pilots, and you can have guys who are not fighter pilots, but they are guys who fly fighters. And I think my observation across the board is that they're all pretty much the same. They all have Type A personalities. They all want to win. They are typically probably in the sort of top, 15-20% in terms of IQ, probably in the lower half of the EQ spectrum, but generally good people. I say guys. I mean, there's girls too. I say guys as a sort of gender neutral term. Obviously that includes girls too, but yeah, I think they're pretty much all the same.
So you've had all these flights, you've got the books, and then you've been doing. How long have you been doing 10% True?
Since November 2019. So what are we now? So probably 3 years or so, around about that. It's a long. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, what took you down that road? I really enjoy the channel. I love all of it, and I think your style, you pull out. To your point earlier, you open the door and they talk. So you certainly are the fighter pilot whisperer in getting those folks to open up. But what got you going down that road?
I miss talking to them. Was the truth. So I'd spent all this time as a freelance journalist, but working full time, and I kept saying through sort of the early teens, 2012, 13, 14, I kept saying, this is the last book I'm going to write. It's the last book I'm going to write. I need to, I need to go and get a proper job and focus on a career in the city, and which eventually I did, and I just one day just thought, I really miss talking to them. I'm so out of touch with the F-15. I'm so out of touch with the fighter world. What's happening? I wasn't playing DCS. I had basically completely removed myself from anything fighter aviation related. And I thought, well, again, just a self-serving attitude really, which was, if I can go and talk to these guys under the auspices of doing a podcast, then they'll probably talk to me and I'll have the conversation and I'll get what I want from it. And if anybody wants to listen to it when I put it online afterwards, then that's double win. So that's kind of what I did. And the channel's been slow to grow. I think we've only got 12,500 subscribers or something at this point in time, and there are perhaps some reasons for that. I don't monetize it. There's no advertising at the moment. I might change that. I might put some advertising on the channel, because I've been told that's the only way really to get the YouTube algorithm to be kind to you. But the other thing is that not to pin it all on the algorithm, but the other thing is it's a long format. Some of my interviews are 2.5, 3 hours, and that's not for everybody. Some people want a 15-20 minute snapshot of something, or they want it to be an hour because that's their commute length or whatever. And you can 2.5, 3 hours. They're going to get to the end of it, maybe only if they're really interested in it. I don't know, but
well, I'll just say this is that from my perspective, I often don't watch it as much as I'll listen to it in the podcast format, and I'll pick it up. And again, I'm not every listener or viewer, but I think that. More often than not, I get to the end, and I'm like, man, I wish I had more. So for what it's worth, I think that the long format and the quality of it is certainly very solid. So please keep going. Add advertising, whatever makes sense to keep the ball moving forward.
Yeah, second that. But my observation is funny that most of the other good podcasts out there are done by former pilots who miss their lifestyle, and so you're the guy that wanted to be a fighter pilot but still missed them and talked to them. And the effect is just great.
Yeah, you hear that a lot from people. I mean, just generally who leave the military. I'm obviously not military. I've never been military, but I can kind of relate to the idea that the big thing that they miss is maybe not even so much the flying. It's just the camaraderie. It's being around the squadron, shit talking, doing whatever it is that they do, but sort of, and being with people that maybe you went and into combat with, and you shared the perils and the possibility of making the ultimate sacrifice with those people. So there's a sort of a bond, a kindred spirit there that you don't get if you then go and work in a company in the civilian world.
Yeah, I think the quality of the people, and certainly with Vincent or Jello from Fighter Pilot Podcast, I think a lot of his going down the road, making FPP, was part of his continuation and not wanting to, see that part of his part end. And I think he's introduced it and brought a lot of great information to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of it was staying tied into that system. And even now, from a million years ago when I was in a ROTC unit, I still, there's some of the best friends I ever had. So I think to your point, the camaraderie that a lot of people get from it and stick with it. So even BD going to, I've never seen anybody drink as much as you and still live from a hook is so.
That's good advertising.
He's quite the legend.
It's just practice. It's just practice.
It's amazing. So, but like you said, I think that when I think about the different channels that are out there for content consumption, I'm always looking to see when you have something that comes out, because I consider that to be one of the highest quality pieces, and that's why obviously we've reached out from the authentic media side and want to do some work with you as well. 'Cause, man, you're without a doubt to me one of the best interviewers, because I think the other piece that happens when you do have fighter pilots or other folks, they may talk about it, but they're not as interested because they've already lived it. Where I think that you pull out these little, you'll ask these questions that'll sort of just pull out more things. So for those of us that didn't live the life, I think it's fantastic. So
Thank you, Rob.
like I said,
I appreciate that. It's good. That's great feedback.
I think what's important here is that if you have former fighter pilots talking to other fighter pilots, they would ask questions where they already know all the answers to, but just ask them for the sake of listeners. Whereas if you're not a fighter pilot, some of the questions will be more, let's say, genuine when they're asked. I'm saying, obviously you know a lot of answers before you ask, but yeah.
They also, there are subjects they probably wouldn't naturally go to. Like how do you feel? How did you feel? Were you scared? Were you scared?
That's true.
How did you deal with being frightened? So it's kind of interesting because I had a guy called Paco Geisler on the channel. And Paco's a legend in the F-15 world and more broadly as a fighter pilot in the 90s. And he's just a fantastic guy. And his son messaged me afterwards and said, well, he told you stories he's never told us. And that's not that unusual. I hear that, I'm related to this person, and I'm his son, or I'm his brother, or whatever, and, I'm his best friend, and I never knew that. And I think it's because if you're looking for more than just that sort of surface, sort of scratch the surface type approach, then that's probably what you get.
Yeah, I've had people tell us that, if you're going to do YouTube, the ideal length is 7 minutes. You're kind of like, well, no, because I think the other piece of it is I also look towards evergreen content, right? So if you're going to do it, it'll be, and this is where, and again, I'm not trying to, make Steve the hero show, but what I'd say is that the content you're creating today will be good today and it'll be good in 50 years, when some of those folks are no longer around. So I think the format is solid, but at the end of the day, it does, I think the journalist asking some of these questions certainly brings out more than we normally would see in, hey, well, tell me about the fight, the weapon system, and almost check the boxes. So do you also, I noticed some fantastic pictures behind you. Did you take those pictures?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It's another, again, just sort of I'm coming off really badly here, aren't I? I'm really interested in myself. I would have been a great fighter pilot. So part of, there are two things to it. Part of being, especially as a freelancer, is that if you're going to work for a magazine, you get paid by word count, but you also get paid by image count. So if you can take your own photographs, you can make much more money. And I'm not talking about, lining your toilet seat with gold, or living in a palatial estate or something like that. You don't earn a massive amount as an aviation journalist. It's a very niche area, particularly if you're not prepared to compromise and you only want to write the things you want to write. You're not prepared to be commissioned to do things you don't want to write about, which I was. So the photography is an important part of that, but also it helps with the justification for the flight. So you can say, "Can I come and fly with you? Why? For shits and giggles? No." Or can I come and fly with you? Why? Because I want to take some photographs and we're going to use them for illustrative purposes for this article, or it's going to go on the front cover of a book or whatever. Then you're much more likely to get what you want. So, plus why not? It's another challenge. Part of sort of going in and maybe taking yourself out of your comfort zone and doing something is going to be tricky. And there's quite a lot of pressure attached to it. So it's ultimately it's an ego thing, I think.
Yeah, no, I know that besides my kids playing soccer or football and me taking pictures of that, I think taking pictures of aircraft at air shows and everything else is where I love doing it, and it's so much fun. But I think that too few and far opportunities exist, at least for me, to do that. But I always appreciate amazing shots like that, and as I'm looking back through there. So when we take a look at your channel, three and a half years or so, have there, obviously Star Baby's probably the most recent legend that's out there. That's he's great, hugely entertaining. Really enjoy that. Are there other, like Paco you mentioned, are there other episodes that stand out to you as some of your favorites?
I think it's a really tricky question to answer because I don't want anyone to.
It may be an unfair question.
be offended if I don't mention them.
Right.
I think what I would say is there was one guest in particular who was really reluctant to be a guest, and that was BC Thomas, who was just this amazing person, humble, genuine, sincere, warm, and incredibly knowledgeable. Just this encyclopedic memory around. Although he would dispute that because he would say, no, I made so many mistakes. But when I first talked to him, he was really reluctant to come on the channel. And one of my rules is for myself is that you don't force somebody to do it because they're going to give up a certain amount of time. You're giving up time. This is time away from family that I'm spending. So there's a cost associated with it. It's not really free in that sense. And so it has to be right. It has to feel right. And the guest has to be comfortable and they have to be there for the right reasons. And so, he was probably the closest person I came to sort of doing a little bit of arm bending to get him on. And his reluctance came from, the fact that he would make mistakes. The fact that he would misspeak and he would say the wrong thing. He wasn't worried about really anything else, but he didn't want to misrepresent the SR-71 community. He's the high time pilot in the SR-71. If anybody's not familiar with him, he didn't want to misrepresent the community or do anything that would damage the community or the reputation of the community. And so that was his concern. And so, and in the end, I think we recorded 6 or 7 hours of content. And I suppose those episodes stand out at me. And also because in many cases, a guest will, be on the channel and then we'll have a short communication afterwards. And then that will be it. They've been a guest on the channel and that's it. But BC I've stayed in touch with, and he's sent my son some pictures and some signed photographs and a little business card dated, I think, 1984 that he flew on the SR for a particular flight. And just the nicest person. Yeah. And so I got out of that a relationship with somebody who I really respect and admire, and I'm very grateful for that relationship. And I think hopefully he got out of that an appearance on a podcast where he didn't make any boo-boos or do anything to embarrass himself.
That's
so that
great.
wasn't really an answer to your question, so I'm sorry, but
no, but it was a good response to an unfair question. So I appreciate that because you don't, and again, I appreciate to your point, people spending the time and doing it and having the multiple episodes because again, for those of us that didn't do it, it gives us a view into it. So sort of making a slight transition into DCS and the F-15 module, and I know you can't talk about a lot, but can you give us an overview of how you started working with RASBAM on this project? I first started a sort of relationship, let's say, with Matt Wagner, who's the producer at ED, during the days of LOMAC, and I ended up doing some beta testing for LOMAC, and then I did some testing in the beta team, and then I sort of moved out of that, but I kept in touch with Matt. And I think, I hope I'm not misspeaking here, but I think he put me in touch with RASBAM at some point when it was evident they were going to be doing the F-15 manual and they wanted to help with some reference material. So one of the challenges that RASBAM have is that they need to be able to put together the simulation, but they have to do it in a legal way. There are ITAR laws which are around the export of not classified information but sensitive, let's say, or export controlled information outside of the US. So you can be a civilian in the US with absolutely no security clearance whatsoever, and you can have one of these manuals, but if you ship that to me here in the UK, you could be in trouble. And so everything that RASBAM does has to be, and ED as well, has to go through the process of making sure it's legal and it's not going to fall foul of any laws around exporting information. So there was some information that I'd have that wasn't ITAR controlled, so there was no ITAR statement on it that I could help them with and I could support them with. So I'm pretty sure, it's embarrassing that I don't actually know
for sure that's how the relationship started, but I'm pretty sure that's kind of how the relationship started. And then since then, I've been working. I say working with. I haven't really been working with BD. BD's been sharing with me copies of his fantastic manual for the sim, and I've been doing, some basic testing on the module, which really is basic because I'm not a Strike Eagle pilot. I don't really have any authority beyond, just being an enthusiast, a simulation enthusiast to play it.
Now, do you play a lot of DCS or periodically? Now, do you have small kids at home?
Yeah, I do. It's really tricky because I have very limited time for me, and where I have that time, I put it into the podcast. So I don't play it very regularly at all. No.
No, and I get that because at the same time, that's where when I picked it up. I picked up DCS probably 3 or 4 years ago. But in as much as as I mentioned before, play with hardware stuff, the kids are what takes up the time, and I have a number of other different initiatives that I work on, so I can relate to not having as much time. So, but I've been a sim enthusiast since I was a small kid. So since the Timex Sinclair 1000. So from blocks and pixels, since I am old. I'm very old. But all that to say, I'm pretty. I think a lot of the entire community is very excited to see the module and what's coming down. And I think just the other day a list of features was thrown out on Twitter of what's going to be included. It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing module, I think. I mean, it's already has a lot of things, and there's more things coming later after the EA. And I think it will be the most complex module in DCS right now. I mean, looking at how many systems it has, how many things can be done from both sides, etc. It is a challenge, but it's going to be fun.
So BD, kind of transitioning to your training manual and videos, how did you start down that road?
For the Strike Eagle, or for the
Strike Eagle. I know you've been working with Razbam on a number of things.
It started just like for Steve with Matt Wagner putting us in touch with Ron, but that was before the Mirage, a long time ago. And I think the manual is all my fault because I did the manual for the Mirage because I said, I can do it. And then I started doing one for hire, which I never finished because the module was changing all the time, and I just kind of lost patience with it. But then, if you remember, hire had this pocket guide, which was good, but it was short. And now I think the requirement was to have manuals straight away. And Ron asked me if I can do it. I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so I've spent the last few months spending 80% of my limited time on that. So I don't know how many bugs are there in my release campaigns, which I didn't fix so far because I'm focused on F-15. But
but I just looking at some of the process and procedures and everything that's been it looks fantastic. And I think just like another study sim, I think the F-15 is going to be quite the ordeal, at least for me, to try to find the time to actually get up to speed on it. It looks fantastic though.
But just to finish, it is, but it's also pretty straightforward. The systems are kind of intuitive in many ways, so it's not. I think in that sense, if you compare it with A10, for instance, it's easier to learn or master because it's kind of more straightforward. Sorry, Steve.
That's okay, BT. Yeah, I was going to say a similar thing. I mean, I think there are. There are lots of new things there. There are things there that you can see from Notso's videos. The synthetic aperture radar, the idea of PVU, so precision velocity update. If you're not going to use the EGI, which is the embedded GPS INS, so it's alphabet soup. There's loads of new things there that people won't be familiar with. And I think, I always, as a writer, so I would never touch World War II because I'm not qualified to write about it. But even if I were, I'd think twice about it because it's such a tough audience to write for. Everybody's an expert in World War II. They didn't paint them in that color. They didn't go there. This was, whatever. And I always think flight sims are the same. You are, you're really taking on a tough audience to develop a flight sim like this, because there are some very serious expectations, and there are some people who are very seriously knowledgeable about out there, and they're also quite outspoken. So I would always be careful about setting up something for a fall, or sort of over promising and then under delivering. But I do feel like the Strike Eagle has the potential to match Heat Blur's F-14 in terms of the level of complexity and involvement and immersion for the player. And I think that's going to be true when the multi-crew side of things comes through. So if you can jump in the back seat and have a Wizzo run the fight in an air-to-air engagement until, let's say, 15 miles, and then they hand over to the pilot, which was basically the doctrine or the standard operating procedure for the Strike Eagle guys in the up until, let's say, the early 2000s. It changed a little after that, and then the pilot ran the radar off throughout the whole intercept. But if you take that sort of philosophy and then you say, okay, and we're going to go and hit a target, and we're going to do a designation leg, and we're going to have offsets and all those things, and you drive and I'll run the systems, and your job is to keep heads up and look for threats, and we'll share the radar, so it's a timeshare thing. I'll use it to do this, and then you take it to do that, and then you give it back. I think for people who are into multiplayer, it's going to be phenomenal. And if you're single player, which I am, because I don't have any friends, so I couldn't multiplayer anyway. But if I did, I wouldn't have the time. I wouldn't have the time to go on and do that kind of thing. And if you're single player, it's going to be the same thing, but even more challenging, because you're going to have to. Well, you can do most things from the front seat, but you've only got 3 screens. And if you really want to be in a sense of immersion, then maybe you'll jump into the back seat and you'll have your own setup in the back seat for the way the pages scroll on the displays and so on and so forth. So yeah, I would be. I don't want to set Razban up for a fall, but I feel that way. I feel like there's lots of new things there. There are lots of possibilities that have not been realized so far in the DCS world that the Strike Eagle module would deliver.
And for the multi-crew, it's going to be, the great moment will be when it will synchronize to a point where, you have UFC, and when you type things in UFC in the back, it shows in the front as well. And then if you type something that's wrong, it will flash in the front seat. And apparently there was this trick that the backseater would type B00BS, and then the front guy would type something and it would start flashing at him.
Oh my goodness. No, that's fantastic. So as we look at that module kind of coming in the next period of time, I don't know what the release schedule is, but so are you guys working on a module together or anything like that? I know Star Baby's had some great stories, and I know from one of the episodes that he doesn't really want to participate with DCS, but are there any kind of modules or campaigns that you guys have thought about doing or working together with?
Yeah, we have plans for that.
Yes.
We do. We need to have a good campaign with a good module. It's just we want to wait a little until we get more features that are there after the early access to get the fully immersive campaign. So of course it will be a single player one, so we need some stuff added. But yeah, we're thinking about it.
I think there are sort of potentially sort of 2 or 3 that we've talked about offline. BD, we can cut this out if you don't agree to it, but I think the one we can talk about is probably Inherent Resolve, which was the US action in Syria in the sort of 2013, 14, 15, 16 sort of period. Don't quote me on those dates. I need to go back and check on them, but around that period.
Yeah,
and so there's I've already written most of it in terms of the mission sequence and the narrative and the story, and that's mostly based off of talking to guys who were there and flew those missions. And in fact, if you go to 10% True and look at for the F-15E playlist, and I can provide that, and Rob, maybe you can put that in the link or something in the description here. But
yeah, absolutely.
There's a guy called Stinger. Stinger talks about going and flying in 2016, I think, in Syria. He was the backseater of the Strike Eagle that got the UAV AMRAAM kill. And he tells that story, and so there's a narrative there from him and from other guys who have been involved that have informed it. I think one of the things that is a challenge with the early release sort of status, let's say, of the module is that there are not going to be any smart weapons. There are going to be no inertially aided munitions, so no GPS, no JDAM. Now, during that time period in Syria, they actually were short of those types of weapons. So they increasingly used things like Mark 82s in order to preserve their IAM stocks, their War Reserve Material stocks. So we could potentially go out the door, and we haven't, BD and I haven't talked about this or agreed anything, so this is not an announcement, but it's just a conversation. We could potentially go out the door with an inherent resolve campaign where there are no IAMs. You kind of work around that. You have a little bit of artistic license, and then you could come back and then add the IAMs later. But that's where we're at. And then there are 2 other campaigns that we're thinking of that we can't say anything about because of other reasons. But I think I love BD's stuff. I think his campaigns are fantastic. So I'm excited about the prospect of working with him. Or put another way, I'm excited about the prospect of doing the easy job of writing it and then giving him the tough job of making it a reality in the sim.
That's great. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, looking forward to that. It's going to be. I like it that way because writing is a tough part, especially if I love writing, but then when I get ready material that's fact checked and then based on real stuff, it's much easier to do. And then maybe we can get some of those guys to do some voice acting for the campaigns that were really there. What do you think?
Yeah, for added authenticity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's honestly, I think that's one of the things when it comes down to BD in his campaigns is the authenticity. And so for the rivet counters that are out there, as Casma would say, that we certainly appreciate all the level of detail and everything goes into, certainly with a lot of the Raven 1 stuff. So that's a big fan of that. So
the only real issue is time, but kind of a year from now, I'm going to move to DCS full time, leaving my day job and just switch there. So that will give us plenty more time, and me to deliver stuff. So
wow,
can't wait.
Resolve 1 through 15. So yeah, I think you guys, what you got to do is write it, and BD will be cranking it out. That's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be fantastic. And if anybody out there is interested in hearing I think Star Baby's got some really interesting stories, and obviously we'll put the links in there to the episodes, 100% true or 10% true episodes specifically that are relating to the F-15E. So I think, like I said, I think if you're excited about the module and you want to get spun up, you can't get a better primer than the 10% true episodes. They're great.
Yeah, we've got pretty much the whole timeline of Strike Eagle guys on there. So we've got the guys who took the jet to Desert Storm in January 1991. Flew it mostly only with a nav FLIR, no target pod. They were doing low-level dropping CBU-20 and Mark 82, Mark 84 at night from sort of low-altitude deliveries and dive toss and all these kinds of, shit scary things. Those guys are on there. Then there's talking to Hacker Haskin, who flew the aeroplane in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's talking about his experiences there. And then there's Junior Summingsby, who was in the initial cadre of instructors. So he taught the guys who went out to Iraq in 1991. So he talks about the airplane in its very earliest days and how they took it from being brand new to being ready for operational service. And then there's Stinger, who talks about Syria, and then Starbaby, who talks about Balkans and some of his experiences in Iraq in 2003. So yeah, so if you want to get spun up around the Strike Eagle, check out the playlist, and you can start from the beginning and work up to present day, almost.
Yeah, no, I think, and what we'll do is we'll include a list in the show notes, so folks can link on over to that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we've gone through my entire list of things to cover. Is there anything else that we're missing that we wanted to touch on today?
No, Steve, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think the only thing I would say, again, just sort of from an awareness point of view, is that as my sort of part of the commercial agreement with Razbam is that they can bundle my Strike Eagle book
right.
with the module. So if you're kind of on the fence about whether or not you get the module, I sort of understand that, and maybe you'll wait and see. But if you want to get a free book, 100,000 words, tells the full story of the aeroplane, and it is free. They're not adding $1 or $2 or $3 or $5 to the price. The price is fixed. You get it for free when you buy the module, and the module comes out, because it will be part of the download. You can't, buy the module in pre-release and then go and download the book. The book comes with the module when it comes out. Then perhaps that will swing it for you. But
yeah, the manual is only 75,000 at the moment,
75
but it'll
is
grow.
crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have 175,000 words of reading to do.
To fly.
I don't know if we should cut that. That's not a selling point.
For DCS players, it is.
No, actually, for this crowd, it probably is. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Steve. Thanks, BD. Thanks, and we'll.
If you haven't done it, check the 10% True podcast and the Air Combat Sim, which is 110% true. It's like so true.
It's more than 100% true. That's right. And we're gonna have a new skywriting episode.
Oh yes, coming up.
We always got to include that. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed those episodes. And while we didn't have Casmo with us today, he's back flying and drawing some something in the sky, perhaps in a familiar shape. Yeah.
With
and
chemtrails.
Practicing with chemtrails. That's right. So if you, so hopefully we'll have him back on the next episode. And thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thanks for joining.
All right, guys, you're not getting away with it that easily. Casmo here, on break from work. Didn't make it to interview with the boys, but I did get to slip in real quick for this short interview with the guys over at Fox 3 Managed Solutions. Luck and Hammy, who unfortunately had internet issues right as we got started, so it's just me and Luck talking about Fox 3, and I think you guys will learn something about this, and of course they've got a big event coming up that you guys should be checking out, so without further ado, we'll just jump right in.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having us. I'm Luck. I'm the owner of Fox 3, and basically, we're all DCS players ourselves, and back in 2020 when the pandemic was raging and I was stuck at home and not working out of the house, and I did a lot of DCS, and I was playing DCS only single player, and then I went online and this is like a whole new game, and so I started getting involved in a bunch of groups, and we always had server problems, so planes flying backwards, desyncs and all that stuff. So I started hosting them, and I put it together, and I had about 5 groups working with us. And then pretty soon I'm like, I could probably do this as a business. And so I started messing around with the idea. And at first, all the servers were hosted out of my basement. Now I don't have any, but they're all in the cloud now. But, it became something that we got really good at in making it so it was turnkey and easy to use. And that's the key. Everybody wants to jump in, have a good experience, but they don't want to have to futz around with the ports and making all the software work and all that stuff. So that's what we provide.
Yeah, I've had trouble, and it's probably like my setup, because I've got like a router for the home, and then I run it out to my studio / shed, and then I've got another router, and I've never been able to make like a DCS server work that anyone could connect to. So yeah, I definitely share that frustration, but with your stuff, you guys have graciously, donated one for me and my stuff, and it's super easy. So I don't want to take your thunder, but explain, like, when somebody signs up, what are they getting, and how does it work?
Sure. So basically you go to the site and you pick your tier, and the tiers are based on user slots or functionality. For instance, we have low tier stuff like value tier and co-op tier for people that want to do like them and their couple of friends, and they don't really care about SRS or a lot of ATC, and they just want to fly. And that's what that is for. And the upper tier ones can include things like a lot of ATC, TAC view, SRS, the ability to upload your own mods and things like that. So when you buy a server, you basically register, you sign up for a subscription for the tier that you want, and then you get your welcome letter when it's built. And we usually get the servers up within 30 to 40 minutes. Sometimes they go a little longer. Yesterday I did one that was 4 hours
Hmm.
because I was on the road for 4 hours. But when I got back here, I provisioned it, and it was great. But essentially, what happens is you'll get your login, and you have access to the DCS website where you have the web GUI, and you could manipulate your server. You could load missions, start stop missions, change the name of your server, add a password if you'd like, and then we give you cloud access. And the cloud access drive is basically to upload your mission files, download your TAC view files, look at your log files. You can upload mods and liveries and anything that you would do in a normal DCS server. And we don't give access to the remote desktop. That would be a security issue for us. So to maintain the ability for us to manage it 100% and just make it available, you would get that situation where you'd log in, be able to just once you have your server running, you could upload any mission you want. You could load Liberation or Foothold, or if you have a custom mission, or if you want to download missions, or we even have some missions to start out with. But and then you can just simply start it up and connect with your DCS client and fly with your friends. And that's the idea. We wanted to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, and it is super easy. Because like you said, you got the cloud. I mean, you just dump it in there and then go to the GUI, which I didn't understand how that worked. Because we've had a server with like my community, my Discord and stuff, but we had it based off of a server. I think it's in Dallas or something. And so you'd have to connect to the remote connect to the server, and then you'd have to go into the Google or whatever you use to access the GUI and all that stuff. But I didn't realize that in your case, at least, you just go to the DCS website, log in, and then you've got access to whatever your servers are and click on it. So yeah, it's ridiculously simple to work. Now, I was also kind of impressed with the way you guys handle like tickets for like issues, because I know it was just a small issue when I started mine with you, but it was quickly resolved. But it was interesting, like when you've got the Discord kind of jazzed up, where you just go in there and click on something, and it takes you to a ticket or a work order or something.
Right. Yeah. So I have to thank my staff for that. Like DJ 45X, he created that ticket system, and he and Adam and Hammy and me, and there's three others that we have on occasion. We don't have a very large staff, but we were able to handle support from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern, and anytime someone makes a ticket, we usually jump on them, get them done, get them resolved pretty quick. Sometimes if we have to get someone in the voice and share screens, we do that. If it's a bad case, most of the time we can fix the problem pretty quickly.
Yeah. So how big has this gotten? I mean, how many servers roughly are you providing for people?
So we started in fall of 2021 officially, and we've been growing about. I couldn't tell you the percentage. We have 200 and let me look real quick. 254 servers at the moment that we're managing. 225 customers, because some customers have multiple servers. And I think when I get to 400 servers, I get to quit my day job. but it's still growing, and it's good for the community. And I think if you look on the percentages, I think there's any given time there's about 1,600 DCS servers worldwide, and we're running 250. So we're about 16-18% of those servers.
Yeah. And DCS itself is growing. I mean, I talk to people at ED, and all the numbers are there. So hopefully you'll get that 400, and you can quit your day job and just watch the lines move around, I guess, on the Matrix or whatever you do.
Right.
No, that's awesome. Like I said, I had no idea such a thing existed, and it's a pretty neat service. And obviously people are buying into it. Again, for my use of it, and I've not even pushed the limits at all, because I know you guys gave me access to one of the higher tier ones, and I haven't even really used it to its full capacity. But I've never really had any issues with it. And you guys are pretty quick on updates when ED pushes out an update. So there's a bit of a delay there, right? Because you've got to update all those servers.
Right. So we try to automate as much as possible. In fact, every single patch that comes out, we get one step closer to 100% automation. And so usually if we have a couple people doing it, we can get it done in about a half hour. And if there's, a lot of times it's just one of us doing it. It takes, 1 to 2 hours, depending on how large the patch is and what kind of stuff we have to do to get it all working. But we got it, semi-automated right now, and we're getting closer every day. And we that's what we do. We spend our time making making it more bulletproof. So if something happens, it auto fixes itself. Or if there's a patch that comes out, we can send an alert that says, "Hey, you patch yourself," and it'll do it. So that's where we are. That's our focus.
Okay. What about ping and latency and all that stuff? Where do you have these, these locations that people can get servers on?
That's a good question. So we have servers all over the world, and we have a data center in Sydney, Singapore, several in France, one in Poland, and one in Germany, and then we have several in the East Coast and several in the West Coast. And soon to come, I'm got another one in Singapore, and I'm going to add a data center in Dallas, and that'll give us pretty good coverage. I think, and so at any given time, I think if you check any of our servers, nobody should have over a 70 millisecond ping. If they did, we put them in the wrong spot. We get them closer. But that being said, I jump on the Australian servers all the time to play with a good group down there in Australia, and I get about a 220 millisecond ping, and it's still very playable. I don't have any issues. We are working on something new too. I wanted to kind of tell you about. We're
Yeah, go ahead.
working on, how people always have their custom liveries and they want their own skins for their planes and helicopters. Well, we're working on an application that'll allow you to select like a pattern and upload your nose art and your tail art and your different things that you want on your plane, even your name, or if you want your helmet color or something like that. And then it generates it and then you can download it. And so you don't have to look for somebody that knows GIMP or Blender and ask them to build it. So we're working on that. We're hoping to roll it out by the end of June, at least a prototype.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you too, because you mentioned it before. If you did have your own paint schemes and stuff, how does that work with your server? You just load it up into the cloud, same drive, and then it's good? Or?
Yeah, what the interesting thing about liveries is every single client has to have the livery. So when you put it in the server, it really doesn't do much except for the NPC planes. Like if you have, your AWACS plane, you want to have a certain skin on it, you'd have to put it on the server. But everybody else needs to have that livery on their client.
Right.
So most squad groups will have a Google Drive somewhere, and they can download all their skins. But that is something I wish that we can work with ED to fix and make it so you just put it on the server and make a download from there.
Yeah. Well, you guys are getting ready to host an event here in about a month. Can you tell us what that's about?
Yeah, so we're doing a Fox 3 Guns tournament, Top Gun tournament, we call it, and the entry fees and all the what we're trying to do is raise money for 4 Paws for Patriots. 4 Paws for Patriots is a group that trains assistant dogs for veterans, and so these dogs can be helping someone with PTSD or helping them walk or helping them with if they're blind, or so these dogs do all kinds of different things. And it's a great charity. They're located at 4paws4patriots.org if you want to check them out. And we have some we're raising money for them through the entry fee for the tournament. So the tournament is sponsored by Eagle Dynamics, Ohio Roasting, R Delta. Let's see, there's a bunch of others actually. SimWorks, Delta Sim Controls, On Your 12, TacView. I think if I missed anybody, I'm sorry, but I think I got everybody there. And
it's a good problem to have. You can't even remember how many sponsors. Yeah.
Exactly. They're all donating prizes and stuff. And we have some really good prizes coming. Like, for instance, there's upfront controller for an F-15. There's a couple RASBAM modules from SimWorks. There's also a Vulcan Sim ticket. I don't know if you've heard of this. This is a Vulcan bomber simulator. It's in the UK. So it's going to be someone in the UK is going to win that. Someone in Europe is going to win that one. And the other thing is the Delta Sims has an F-16 ICP and a Garmin replica that they're going to donate. And then we got some TacView licenses and some modules from Eagle Dynamics. and some Fox 3 merch. So there's lots of good stuff to be won here. So,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a guns only tournament. It's going to have Warbirds, Cold War planes, and 4th gen jets. So anybody can sign up. If you don't want to sign up and actually participate, you can sign up and just type donation in the plane type, and that'll be used, and we'll send it right directly to for Pause for Patriots.
Okay. And how much is the entry fee?
It's $10.
Okay.
And you can get it on our website.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll try and remember because I'm terrible at it, but make sure that we get a link put in the show notes for this as well. And I know I've shared that on my social media stuff. But I mean, one thing I've discovered, I've done a couple charity events since I've started my channel. The DCS community, you know, for all the times that we sometimes want the DCS community to just take a chill pill, is actually pretty generous when it comes to things like this, because you know it's for veterans and it's military related, and guys seem to get on board with that. So hopefully people listening to this will share it and get involved. And even if they're not able to play, like I'm a terrible gunfighter, so I probably wouldn't be able to add much to the contest except give somebody a target, but definitely donations are accepted. So well, cool. Yeah, anything else you want to add about Fox 3?
You know, other than we're just a bunch of people like you. We're in the community. We all fly, and we're always looking for that next good mission to fly with people. So if you guys want to have us, invite us, because we don't get to fly on a regular basis now due to the fact we're always working. So, but I'd love to join some of you all for a good mission. And I like to fly the F-14. So,
well, are you excited about the F-15?
I am so excited about the F-15. I'm going to learn the heck out of it. And so I am not a really good air to ground guy. I've never been good with pods. I've never, but when it's a one-on-one dogfight or, you know, a battle for the air, that just makes me, you know, that's what turns me on about airplanes. So that, and I'm looking forward to the F-4U Corsair when it comes out, but the F-15 is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. No, the F-15, I think you'll enjoy it. I mean, obviously you're gonna have to learn how to push some mud, but it's not too complicated. I've been playing with it since I got this preview version. I think if you enjoy the F-14, I think you can like this one too, because it's really not overly complicated, despite what I think some people thought it would be. It's definitely not an A-10.
Yes, that is hard. I think that's what turned me off of air to ground.
Yeah, it's a great plane, but God, there's just so much to know, and yeah, there's not nearly the button pushing and finger jamming that's going on with the A-10. So hopefully we'll get it in everyone's hands soon, and yeah, you and I'll go zoom around. I'll show you how to drop some bombs.
Awesome. Well, Casmo, thank you very much for having us on. I certainly appreciate it, and you know, once again, thanks again for all your help.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the sponsorship, and like I said, I need to get some events going and really push that server. But it has been super helpful to me so far, just with the average kind of stuff that I'm doing. And I appreciate you guys coming on to the show and talking about what you do and letting us know about this event. We'll definitely push that out there. And for everyone listening, please go take a look at that. And if you are in the market for a server for your group or your squadron or your clan or whatever the hell you call it, definitely check out Fox 3 and see what they got going on. It is super simple to use and very convenient. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
This has been the Air Combat Sim Podcast. Music by Vampire Stepdad. Want to support the show? Check out our Patreon. Follow us on Facebook. And be sure to leave a comment and rating.